40 and 70% of all that money, in fact, belongs to the IRS. Why? What a complicated mess. It's hard for the client to keep track of, let alone what's going to happen when he's dead and his daughter has to go, what? Where? How? It's going to be just a horrific boondoggle. Let's think about some alternatives. Hi, this is Rick Durfee. I'm here to talk to you today about retirement accounts. And I'm talking about all kinds, IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, Roth, the whole shoot match. Although the rules vary somewhat differently between those, there are some common features you need to know about to plan your estate. And I'm just going to generically refer to all of them as an IRA. The first thing you got to know is, where in the heck do these things come from and why do we have them? They are a government plan created by federal law. So they were invented by the politicians. Now, you might think that if the politicians are inventing something like this, they're doing it to benefit you. The politicians want you to think they're benefiting you, but they also have a tax strategy behind it all. I will tell you that I was at a seminar, a convention. There were at least 100 other lawyers just like me and about the same number of CPAs. And we had a world-renowned, a very, very famous economist speaking, and he said in his talk that he was not concerned about the federal debt, the national debt whatsoever, because the federal government had off-balance sheet assets. And when it came to the Q and answer question, 200 hands went up and said, what do you mean, off-balance sheet assets? And he had the numbers. I don't have the numbers, but he did. And he said, well, there's this many billion or trillion of dollars in all these retirement accounts and all these IRAs. And guess what? We know that somewhere between 40 and 70% of all that money, in fact, belongs to the IRS. And the clever thing is, people think it's theirs. And so they're going to take good care of it and grow it as much as possible. But sooner or later, there's going to come an event where there's going to be a tax. And the federal government is going to be able to recover that tax and pay for the national debt. Now, I'm not equipped to comment on whether or not there's actually enough there to cover the national debt as high as it's grown, but you got to understand that at least in terms of your retirement accounts, it's not all yours. There's a big chunk that belongs to the tax man. And even if you're looking at things like a Roth conversion, I'm going to convert my traditional IRA to a Roth to get the tax-free, in air quotes, benefits of the Roth IRA. Guess what? That's a taxable event. Why would politicians incentivize that? To raise tax revenues. So just understand, if you go into a room, you got to know where the exits are. And if you're going to go into a retirement plan, you got to know, how am I getting out and when am I getting out? And I want to point out something that's very crucial that people don't understand. The I in IRA stands for individual. The most tax-efficient use of a retirement plan is to fund the retirement of an individual. Now, we'll include a spouse in that individual because you're married, you're one. So the most tax-efficient use of those retirement accounts is to pay for your retirement. The least tax-efficient thing you can do with those retirement accounts is leave them to your children. And the reason for that is they're subject to an income tax. They have to come out rapidly. You don't get to stretch it. At the moment of this video, the general rule is 10 years, and there's some nuances to that. And the IRS has actually changed the rules more than once. So watch and see what the rules are. At the time you pass away, those are the rules that count. So they're going to have to take them out. They're going to pay a tax. So it's often more tax efficient for you to have a plan to withdraw the money from the IRA and do something else with it, even if it's a Roth, but there are alternatives to the Roth as well, before you die. It simplifies your estate. I just met with a client, by the way, who had like 9 different retirement accounts from different things. Why? What a complicated mess. It's hard for the client to keep track of, let alone what's going to happen when he's dead and his daughter has to go, what? Where? How? It's going to be just a horrific boondoggle. So don't have so many plans. By the way, what do most retirement plans do, IRAs in particular? They're a way of deferring taxes. There are other things that defer taxes. Buy and hold type of investments are an example. A lot of businesses defer taxes. There are many, many ways to defer taxes. So the politician-created government plan may not be the best thing. So how do we plan for these retirement accounts, these IRAs, in our estate plan? One of the things you have to look at is if you have a trust, and that is the vehicle of choice for most estate planners these days, you got to look at it. Does it have provisions in it to specifically deal with and address the issues particular to retirement plans? And most simple, easy, short trusts don't, which means you don't have the tools you need to accommodate the issues that arise with a retirement plan. So a well-crafted trust is going to have a section in it that specifically deals with retirement accounts. And I've seen 3-paragraph sections and 6-page sections that deal with those retirement plans. Depending on the size of your retirement plan, the short one might be okay, but the long one might be better depending on what you have going on. But again, once again, in my opinion and experience and observation of what happens over time, it's going to be better if you have a plan to withdraw those retirement accounts before you die. But what happens if you have an overfunded IRA? Now, what does overfunded mean? Overfunded, in my opinion and experience, means you have more in that retirement account than you will ever need or be able to take out to pay for your retirement. And we see this when retirement accounts get big. Sometimes by rolling over pensions and other things, an IRA or a retirement account can become huge, so big that the earnings on the account outpace the required minimum distributions, even when you hit that age where you have to take money out. And so people are going, well, I don't want to take the money out, but I'm taking out what I have to, and I hate it because I have to pay taxes on it, and the account keeps growing. Guess what's going to happen to that account? Someday the money's going to come out. So as you have this exit plan, as you're thinking through how and when are we going to get the money out, you want to think about your tax brackets. And not only your tax brackets, but potentially the tax brackets of the next generation if you're not going to be able to get it out during your lifetime. And this is another reason why get it out while you're alive is often the better. Usually, you will be at a better tax rate than your children who have their own professions and their own careers and their own businesses that are already at a high tax rate. And the last thing they need is for your retirement account to push them up into a higher bracket. So look at the brackets multi-generationally. You have to think long-term about that. But what if you have this big, huge IRA? What can you do? You can do some qualified charitable distributions. Those are really cool. Those can be a substitute up to a certain amount for your required minimum distributions in some cases. And by the way, if you're going to leave something to charity anyway, if you're thinking, yeah, I want to be charitable when I pass, I want to have some part of my estate plan to give to charity, whether it's a personal foundation or a donor advised fund or whatever it is that you have going on, the most tax efficient thing you can leave to your charities is a traditional IRA or the equivalent. Because when you do that, dollar for dollar, it all goes there, no income tax, no estate tax. It's really cool. So if you're going to give something to charity anyway and you're thinking, well, what should I give them? Should I give them this or that? Look seriously at your retirement plan. And I want to emphasize here, this kind of planning is something you need to coordinate with somebody who understands the rules and somebody who has different incentives than you might think. Often the financial advisors, and I love financial advisors, I work with lots of them, but often their incentive is to maximize the dollars that they're managing on your behalf. So they don't want to reduce the dollars that they're managing on your behalf because then their compensation goes down. So that's a different incentive than I want this money to be handled in the most tax efficient manner possible, which might include taking some out, paying some taxes now instead of paying them later because the tax rate today is going to be lower than it is going to be tomorrow, and the taxable amount is going to be smaller today than it will be in the future. So maybe talk with a lawyer who doesn't make 10 cents if you do or do not do that Roth conversion, or who doesn't make 10 cents in managing your money, but who understands the rules with IRAs and retirement accounts and can give you some counsel that might be a different thing than you're hearing somewhere else. So I want to give you an example of this. This is really cool. I was at an event. I had spoken at this event and I was meeting people, and I had a guy come up to me after he heard a similar conversation as we're having right here, and he said, I have $4 million in my IRA. I'm getting RMDs and it's not enough. The money keeps growing. It's going to be $8 or $12 million by the time I die. And he says, but I really want that money to go to my kids. And we talked through it. The tax brackets were different at that time than they are today. But we talked through how big the tax hit was going to be on that. And it was huge because he had an estate that was large enough that he had not only an income tax, but he had an estate tax. So I asked him, well, how much do you really want to go to your kids? Because they're going to get a whole bunch of other stuff too. And he says, well, I've thought about this and I'm not really that concerned about the growth. I really want them to get $4 million. And I said, so 4 million, if we hit 4 million, that's enough. That's enough for you. And he said, yeah. And I said, well, do you have a life insurance advisor? And he goes, no. And I said, well, there's this guy who spoke in this same room before me. And he happens to be standing right there. And I said, come here, buddy. And he came over and I said, so how, and we asked him his age and his health and a couple of other questions like that. And I said, how much is $4 million of life insurance going to cost on this guy? And he gave me a number. The guy who was a potential client at that time said, that's less than my RMDs every year. And so we figured out that if we created what's called an irrevocable life insurance trust, and I'm going to encourage an irrevocable dynasty life insurance trust, there's a big difference. We were able to set that up. He was able to buy that $4 million of life insurance. His kids are going to get $4 million tax-free, which is really cool, outside of his taxable estate, not taxed when he dies. And guess what? He still has them $4 million on the IRA. He can take it out and use it for the rest of his life as much as he wants to. When he dies, it'll roll over to his spouse. It'll take care of her just fine and dandy for the rest of her life. So he didn't lose the IRA, but he was able to create the equivalent amount of wealth for his family tax-free. I want to tell you, as a lawyer who works in this industry and has done so for decades, do you know how many IRAs and retirement accounts I have personally? 0. And I make no money selling life insurance or financial products. Why do I do that? Long before I became a lawyer, I figured out somehow, actually I was in an economics class at a university when the light bulb went off and I saw how this might work. If you buy low death benefit, high cash value life insurance, so the mortality cost inside the policy is low, but the cash value is working hard, doing cool things, you actually get the equivalent and sometimes even better benefits than you would in a traditional IRA. So if you're starting out, if you're young, if you're on the front end of your career instead of on the back end, and you're going, should I set up an IRA? I own a business. Should I do this for myself? Maybe think about some alternatives before you do that. If you're on the back end of your career and you've already shoveled all that money into the IRA, let's help you come up with some strategies to get out of it in a tax-efficient manner. Alternatively, if you're an employee, if you're working for somebody else and they will match your contributions, take as much as you can get. Maximize that baby out. It's a good deal. Get the matching contributions. So there's a different mindset and a different approach if you're the business owner or the professional and you're funding it out of dollars that you earn because you're in business for yourself versus you're an employee and you're getting the employer contribution. And there's a different mindset if you're at the end of the funding cycle and you're trying to think of how to get this out in a tax-efficient manner. So your estate plan has to deal with this. You got to coordinate with your financial advisor. You need to coordinate with your legal advisor and your accounting tax reporting advisor. It's kind of a team effort to figure out what the optimum thing to do is on this. So get qualified advice. Please comment below and let us know your ideas. Let us know if this helps. If you like this, do all the things everybody else asks you to do. Subscribe and follow. We're taking clients. We advise clients on this sort of thing all the time. If we can help you, we would love to.